For a long time, the video game industry has been a mainstay of modern entertainment, changing quickly in tandem with technological advancements and changing customer tastes. One of the many trends influencing this ever-evolving industry is the obsession with ports, remasters, and remakes of classic video games. This phenomena highlights this timeless popularity of old games and its reflection of larger culture and economic forces influencing the business. Hello everyone, my name is Fejiro and this is cozyfeji, and on this channel we cover a variety of things such as video essays, reviews, JRPGs, and all things cozy gaming. What I've noticed in recent years in this trend that's been happening in the video game and gaming industry is a lot of remakes, remasters, and ports of older video games. If you look at any direct showcase, gaming announcement, whatever it may be, there's always going to be a remake of some sort, whether it be an old-time classic or a game that never got the time of day in other parts of the world. Remakes, remasters, and ports have been a dime a dozen in the past, I would say, decade or so. As someone who has found themselves got into the hobby of gaming in recent years, I myself have noticed a huge uptick in a lot of remakes, remasters, and ports. Oh my god, take a shot how many times I say that in this video. Games that have come out in yesteryear have found a new light in today's modern day of gaming, whether they be giving them a new fresh coat of paint, or just literally just porting those games from those consoles from back then to now. I would find myself as someone who recently got back into gaming in the past 4 to 5 years. Gaming has always been a part of my life, but it wasn't a huge stay or hobby for me until recently. And so for me, it's really interesting to go back to older titles that I either missed out on or didn't really play because I wasn't even interested at the time. But it's just really interesting to know that we're in a modern day gaming where a lot of older titles are being released now again for new customers or new players to play, or also for those people who played it back in the day and having the time to play it. Just in recent years alone, we've seen a huge influx. I'm talking about games like Resident Evil 4, or just the whole Resident Evil franchise being a whole reboot as in itself. Persona 3 Reload, the Final Fantasy 7 remake trilogy that's happening. There is a huge trend, and I wanted to discuss whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. Personally, for me, I guess, spoiler, I don't really think it's a bad thing. However, there is some critiques to be made. So today, I just wanted to talk about all the aspects that goes into remakes, remasters, and ports of games, whether the positives or the negatives, pros and cons, and also whether or not this is actually kind of not necessarily distracting, but kind of deterring companies from actually making new IP and whatnot. And also want to just talk about how there's a lot of other factors that go into when it comes to releasing a port or remaster of a game, whether these developers are doing it for a cash grab or if they're also feeding off of our nostalgia. One thing that needs to be addressed and made known is that people love to reminisce on the past. Nostalgia is a powerful thing that can really shape how we perceive things. In the article, Nostalgia, How to Enjoy Reflecting on the Past, nostalgia is a sentimentality for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. Nostalgia is usually triggered by something reminding an individual of an experience from the past. It is often characterized as a longing or desire to return to a former time or place. Nostalgia isn't just about fond recollections. It may also be about yearning for a bygone era when life was easier or when we had a stronger ties to one another. So when you apply that to video games, it takes on a very interesting form of sentimentality. Nostalgia is a major factor in the popularity of remakes, remasters, and ports. Many gamers have a soft spot in their hearts for their vintage games from their youth that bring back carefree days. These games have a strong emotional pull that is frequently connected to defining moments and personal experiences. Developers may access a wealth of nostalgia value by reimagining these well-loved games, which attracts both seasoned gamers and new ones. Moreover, the cultural legacy of iconic games cannot be overstated. Titles like Final Fantasy VII, Persona 3, and Super Mario RPG are not merely games, they're cultural touchstones that have influenced generations of gamers and game designers alike. By remaking or remastering these classics, the industry preserves its heritage while introducing timeless stories and gameplay to younger audiences who may have missed the originals. I think one of the major pushes as to why we see a lot of remakes, remasters, and ports of older titles is because many people want to reminisce and go back to the simpler times of those games, or just want to maybe re-experience that feeling that they felt when they first played that game for the first time. I know that for many people, there's always that one game in their childhood that holds so close and dear to their heart that they just will be with them for the rest of their lives. That holds such beautiful memories for them. For me, a game that I can think of, honestly, not JRPG related, because when I was young and I wasn't playing JRPGs, I'm gonna be so real. I was playing a lot of just like random games like Mario, and of course my all-time favorite, Nintendogs. That was probably the first proper game that I really spent hours on end playing, and I just remember just playing it just having my own time with my little Nintendo Switch, with my DS Lite in pink, and just like playing with my dogs, Daisy, Pugsley. But I would spend all of my time playing those. I would come after school and open up my DS, whisper to my dogs, play with them, go on walks, take them to competitions, and it just felt so, I don't know, it just felt like my time. It just felt like a time for me to just be with my dogs, even though, because at the time my parents did not want pets in our house. But just being able to pick up that game was such a special time for me. And even I still have that exact copy. I don't have the case, but I had the exact copy of that game. And it's always fun to just pick up my DS every once in a while, check on my dogs and see how they're doing, and just to reminisce on those times when I really was just really invested into these games. Because especially as a child back then, that was my form of escape from the harsh life of school at that time. But you know what I mean, just being able to just find yourself and lost into a world of those games was such a fun feeling, and being able to re-experience that again would be nice, because I know sometimes not many people have those devices to play it on. So be able to have a device to play it on today, or modern platforms to play them, is a great way to try to tap into that, or get a slice of that experience you felt back when you were a kid or when you were younger. A few titles that I definitely want to mention, a few recent years that I've also played as well, is, for example, Persona 3. Persona 3 is a very interesting case, as that game has, I believe, as of right now, the filming of this video, 4 iterations of that game. We have the base game of Persona 3, Persona 3 Fez, as well as Persona 3 Portable, Persona 3 Portable, and then most recently in 2024, we got Persona 3 Reload. Now, what was really interesting about Persona 3 is that Persona 3 was the Persona to entry. I feel like that kind of opened the eyes for people to the JRPG genre and the Persona franchise. But of course, I feel like Persona 4 and Persona 4 was the one that kind of pushed it, and then Persona 5 was the one that really put it on the map for not just JRPG fans, but video game lovers as a whole. But I remember when Persona 5 was coming out, a lot of people loved the art style and the direction that Persona 5 went. And a lot of people were thinking, this would be really great to see older titles in this kind of style and aesthetic. And a lot of the fans were kind of pushing and hoping that Atlus would someday remake their older titles. And of course, it was released and announced that Persona 3 would be the one to take part in this new fresh coat of paint. And it has garnered a lot of love and a lot of critiques as well on whether or not it was a true great adaptation of the original. Some people wanted other iterations of the game to be remastered, but again, it's really nice to be able to see Persona 3 in modern platforms in a new fresh coat of paint, and for everyone to experience for the first time, me and myself included. I, like many others, was introduced to Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal as their entry to the franchise, and I want to go back and play other games. And I didn't know where to start, because let's be real, like I mentioned before, Persona 3 is an interesting one because it has different entry points. Well, not entry points, but different iterations to play. Know which one is the definitive edition to play it. And so I was hoping and holding out, because there have been rumors for so long of whether or not this game would be remade, and so when it was, I definitely had to snag a copy. And I'm honestly really glad that I'm playing this one, and I definitely want to go back and play the older and the original version. But being able to have this game on a modern platform for players to experience it the first time, again, Persona fans who love the franchise and got introduced to the franchise to later titles, being able to go back and finally experience this one that many people credit to be their favorite, if not the best one, is a great thing to see. Being able to give this platform on modern day is a win-win for everyone, a win-win for gamers and players and JRPG lovers, as well as the developer Atlas and Sega. So I definitely see that, and I'm really glad that we've been able to allow ourselves to have time and an opportunity to play these games. Another game that came out that was kind of also another remake remaster. Again, I'm going to feel like I'm going to be using those terms interchangeably because remake, remaster, from what I'm aware, remake is when you completely remake the game from the ground up with new graphics, new maybe some new mechanics and quality of life. Remaster is just kind of like giving it a fresh new coat of paint. Nothing really necessarily has changed to the core aspect of the game, but they're just kind of upgrading it with the graphics essentially. So Star Ocean Second Story R was a remaster, pretty much whole remaster of the PS1 title Star Ocean Second Story. Now this is Star Ocean's very interesting when it comes to the JRPG world because it's a beloved franchise but also kind of niche and also kind of not getting a lot of love. But also recently, I believe in 2021, Star Ocean Divide and Force came out on PS5, and so we're starting to see a new shift. And I feel like Star Ocean Second Story R was definitely a kind of testing the waters to see people who loved it. And I know that with this remaster, it was very well received. And I remember when it was announced at the Nintendo Direct, when it came out, and everyone was like, "What is this?" And then to find out that it had this HD 2D style, it got me sold, and I definitely was intrigued by it when I first saw it. When the demo came out, I definitely wanted to get my hands on it and to see what this is about because, again, I'm a JRPG fan, and Star Ocean is a franchise that I've heard about and I heard rumblings about, wanted to know more, and I know that a lot of JRPG fans love the Star Ocean series, but again, it's kind of niche, and there hasn't been the more recent titles that have come out from this franchise haven't been that well received or wasn't really that well made. So to know that they're kind of starting off fresh with a remake with this, I had to add in my 2 cents to it. And when I played the demo, I absolutely loved it, decided to buy it, picked it up for myself, and I didn't really love it as much as I thought I would. But again, I like to give things second chances, so I definitely want to get back into it. But again, when the original came out on the PS1 back in 1998, of course, not many people are going to be able to play that exact version due to maybe cost, or maybe not many people have a PS1 or PS2 readily available. And so knowing that we can have this with a fresh new coat of paint with the HT2D style, which I think is a really great going off a little tangent, I think is a great nod to older games, but again, giving it that fresh coat of paint and giving it a more revitalized modern day aspect to it, which I think is really, really cool. And I'm loving that new trend that the Team Asano team have made with the Octopath series, giving a old aesthetic with modern day twist. I think is such chef's kiss. And many people with the Star Ocean series may had the opportunity to play it back then, including myself. And so being able to play this older title on modern platforms with this HD 2D style is such a cool take. It's such an awesome experience, and then also allows me to take part in a game, a franchise that a lot of people loved back in the day. Now, I'm not technically, and this is not a JRPG, but I wanted to include this because I know a lot of people love these type of games, and it's more of a more recent remake, and that is Demon's Souls. Now, when the PS5 came out, Demon's Souls was one of the launch games to showcase what the PS5 can do. The Souls-like genre has been a huge genre in the video game industry, with popular games, of course, Elden Ring, and also Souls-like games such as Sekiro and Ghost of Tsushima. Being able to see the origins as origins to be in a new light was really cool. Really cool. I kind of want to get into it. I'm kind of trying to dabble into my Souls-like bag this year. We'll see if I actually do, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little scared. But again, being able to see a game that came out in the PS3 era, which I feel like the PS3, it was a very interesting console, because I feel like a lot of people kind of skipped out on that era of video games, especially the PS3. I know that the PS3 was not many people's well-loved console, or not many people's go-to console. So being able to see a game on a console that may have not gotten love, and to see in a fresh new take, a new light, is really cool. Again, really great thing to see. But I know that the Demon's Souls remake isn't very well received by a lot of Souls-like fans. I don't know all the details on all that, but I know that some people kind of have mixed feelings about it. But nonetheless, it's really great to be able to see, overall, the whole point of it is just being able to see older titles get a new fresh coat of paint or being expanded upon, being able to see these games on a modern day platform and being able to experience these games again is always a win-win for everyone, right? From the days of chiptune music and pixelated graphics to photorealistic images and symphonic sounds, technology has advanced significantly. Developers can improve older games and make them more palatable to modern viewers by using modern technologies in remakes and remasters. A game that feels outdated can be brought to back up to date to suit modern standards with better graphics, sound, and gameplay mechanics. The Final Fantasy VII Remake, for example, upgraded the game's graphics but also redesigned its gameplay and narrative presentation, resulting in a novel yet recognizable experience. Older games are given new life by this technical revitalization, which makes them relevant in a time of intense competition and constantly changing user expectations. I think the Final Fantasy VII Remake is a great example of being able to remake a JRPG classic into modern day times. I know a lot of people, again, have mixed bags, and I've mentioned this quite a lot on this channel, but as someone who's played a little bit of the original game, and I've seen, and I do own the FF7 Remake and Intergrade, and I do plan to play them, but I want to play the original first, and then to really appreciate it, and then go into the remakes and the trilogy of it all. But what I really find really interesting about the remake is that, yes, it came out in 1997 on the PS1. It was very revolutionary at the time. No one saw graphics like these or cutscenes like this and a story like that at the time. And as someone who didn't grow up playing that, and it literally came out the year that I was born. I know some people are like, oh my god, you're such a baby. Or maybe some people think I'm old. But either way, I never actually got to experience it. But again, with what's really great about Final Fantasy VII, the remake and the original is that they have ported it onto modern consoles and they remade it. So you got two best of both worlds. So if you're someone who wasn't really loving the remake, you still have the opportunity to play the original on multiple platforms. That game, I believe, is released on the Switch, PC, PS4, PS5. I don't think it's on Xbox, but for the most part, it's on almost every modern day platform. But I want to jump back to the remake. What's really interesting about the remake is that, like I've mentioned before in past videos, is that it's really cool to be able to see the developers at Square Enix tell the story again in a modern lens, being able to expand upon the story. Like with the remake, we got to expand more about the two group Avalanche, because I feel like Jesse and Biggs, and those characters were not afterthoughts, but they weren't really fleshed out, really get to know them in the original game. But with this remake, we get to really get to know their backstory and to know more of them, to get to know them more and to feel for them and to empathize with them. And when they're, I guess, spoiler for a 20-plus-year-old game, but when we do eventually lose some of the members, it hits a lot more because we got to expand upon that. Heck, even in the remake, Midgar, which is a very small section in the main base game, is a 30-plus hour game in the remake. They made literally a whole game dedicated to Midgar alone, which I know some people may not love, but I think it's a really great thing. As someone who's a narrative story girly, I love to be able to flesh out on the world and the people and to really experience it, and so I get to really appreciate that more. Also, I think what's really great to acknowledge is that they also get to refresh and on the gameplay and game style, because of course the original game is a true turn-based RPG, but what's really great about the remake is that they get to add in a lot of bit more modern flair to it. By yes, it's still kind of a strategy turn-based style, but it does have action-based combat elements within it, which I think is, again, brings in new players that may be turned off of the turn-based combat, but still appeases to the original and veteran players of the game. Remakes, remasters, and ports present a profitable possibility commercially. Creating a new game from the ground up entails a large financial and risk commitment. On the other hand, it's usually a safer option to rework an already existing game with an established fan base. Increased chances of commercial success and lower marketing expenses are brought about by the audience already familiar with the brand. Releasing older games has also been simpler than ever because of the growth of digital distribution channels like Steam, the PlayStation Network, and Xbox Game Pass. Classic game adaptations for contemporary PCs and consoles can reach a large audience for comparatively little money and distribution. Strong sales of solo remakes and remasters set a test to the effectiveness of the business strategy. What's really interesting, a lot of these platforms such as Steam and PlayStation, Game Pass, and even Nintendo Switch with the NSO and Nintendo Switch Online, we're seeing a lot of older games being able to see the light of day. On the top of my head, I can think of how, like, when Valkyrie Elysium came out in 2021, PlayStation decided to bring out Valkyrie Profile Lenneth, I believe, onto modern platforms that you can play on both the PS4 and PlayStation 5, which I thought was really great. Also recently, I think John d'Arc, which was a PSP title, is finally being onto modern platforms with PS4 and PS5. You also have NSO, which is a very interesting one because it's a subscription service. However, what's really cool about it is that you can play a lot of older titles from older generation of game consoles such as the N64, NES, now most recently Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, which I think is really great because it's accessible, it's easier money, and again, it's just a lot of people who grew up with those games get to play them again, and people like me who never got to experience them get to experience them the first time, and to join the discourse with those fans who loved it back in the day as well. I do worry that there is a lack of new IP being made. I mean, yes, there are new games coming out every once in a while, but I feel like more often than not, there have been a lot of, all the big news that we see is remakes, or remasters. Like, recently we're getting Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 remade in the HD 2D style. We're also getting Romance and Saga, also another remake. And not only that, a lot of people can consider it kind of lazy on these developers. A great example is the Last of Us series. That game, it was originally released on the PS3, and ever since, that game has been remastered, ported, remade on every PlayStation console or PC system since. We had a remake on the PS4. We have now a new remaster with new graphics on the PS5. And a lot of people like to credit, like, do we even need this? Like, I could just pop in the PS4 on my the PS4 entry or the PS4 edition of it onto my PS5 because it's backwards compatible and play it fine. But people might say, well, the graphics are better, but it's essentially the same game, and it's cheaper if I pay for the PS4 version, or if I still have the PS3, I'll just pay the PS3 version. I always find that practice, I don't know, a little icky sometimes, because it's just like, at this point, we just know that you just want money. Not because, like, oh, we want more people to play it. It's like, at this point, anyone can play it. People can also say that about Skyrim and how that game has been re-released so many times on so many platforms. Again, it's very interesting that sometimes you can definitely tell and see that these kind of developers are clearly just doing it for money, not because, well, we just want more people to play it, if that makes any sense. The trend of remakes and remasters is also being driven by the preservation of video game heritage. A lot of beloved games were first launched on outdated technology. These games run the risk of becoming forgotten over time if updates and modern technologies aren't made for them. The industry makes sure that following generations can enjoy and benefit from the seminal works of the medium by conserving these titles. Remakes and ports also significantly increase accessibility. It might be difficult to find and play older games, especially if you don't have access to retro hardware or software. These games can now be easily accessed by a wider audience thanks to remasters and ports. People with disabilities can also benefit from new accessible features that were not included in the original release. I think one thing that needs to be made known, compared to other mediums of entertainment like film and TV, video games is such an interesting bag because it's hard to access a lot of older titles. Like I mentioned before, if you do not have that hardware to play it, you can't play that game. Unlike TV and with like streaming services, you can go back and play those games, watch those films. It's kind of harder to do that with video games. I know we have streaming services like Steam and Xbox Game Pass that are allowing us to access some older games. But again, there's no guarantee that they're going to have every game that you want. Same thing with streaming services. So I definitely do, and especially streaming services are getting expensive. I know more recently Game Pass are updating their monthly subscription. And at that point, that's just ridiculous. I'd rather just stick to my backlog, at that point. So it's being able to re-release these games on modern platforms would allow other people to play those games again. Although there is a debate whether or not, yes, those remakes or remasters or ports are coming to modern platforms. Sometimes the price tag is just kind of like, is this game really worth $60, $70? There's always that debate on the price point on whether or not when we do remake or port these games, especially if a port of a game that's coming to modern platforms, you're expecting me to pay full price for that. I don't know. Sometimes you lose people on that. So I think it's definitely important to know that with being able to have these remakes, ports, or remasters of older titles, to have that preservation aspect is so important because, like I mentioned before, compared to other mediums, preserving video games is really difficult to do, and being able to have these games on modern platforms would allow, again, for accessibility and great preservation. In the video and game industry, the fascination with remakes, remasters, and ports is a complex phenomenon fueled by commercial incentives, technological developments, nostalgia, and the need for preservation. In addition to profiting from the emotional and cultural significance of these games, the industry guarantees their continuous relevance and accessibility in the contemporary day by reimagining and reintroducing classic titles. The trend of playing and reviving older games is probably going to stay a popular and significant part of the gaming scene, as long as the technology keeps developing and the gaming community keeps expanding. Again, thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while because it's something that's kind of been on my mind for a while, talking about remakes and remasters and ports. I myself love them because, again, like I mentioned before, I'm a new game, like I've found my love for gaming again, and being able to play these titles all over again on new platforms and modern platforms no less is always a great experience. However, there is a concern of whether or not if it's kind of how long can we do this for, the preservation aspect of it all, and as well as is this harming developers from creating new IP and whatnot. But either way, I really had a fun time doing a little bit more research and diving and just being able to talk to you guys about these kind of topics. If you guys enjoyed this video, do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as well as comment down below what is a game that you would love to see remade, remastered, or ported onto modern day consoles. Again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Bye!